All right, now let's look at these ones. Let's look at AMA rules whenever you are involved guma accidents or guma collisions, right? So whenever I'm involved in a collision, what should I do? So the first thing there, stop immediately. That's one thing that's the first thing that you have to do. Stop. Don't do hit and run. Stop. That's the first one. Number two, assess, right? So assess ukuthi bakhona abantu who got injured in that, right? So check if there were people who were injured or killed in that as a result of that collision. All right. So if yes, there were people who were killed or injured, make sure that immediately you call emergency services. There we are talking about ambulances and traffic officers, right? The cops and yeah, traffics. So you call those. One thing that I want you to understand, if there was someone injured or killed, right, you cannot shift your vehicle from the scene, right? Even though it breaks one of the rules. You remember we said you can't block the road, right? So even if it's blocking the road, so once I stopped my vehicle immediately, my net to guma la imele corner, I leave it there, I get out. Guti even bindlela or what, I don't care, right? I shouldn't move that vehicle there, even if it breaks that. The only time you can shift that vehicle, it's if these guys, the traffic officers, they are done doing their measurements and all of those kind of things, and they instruct you to do what. Good, okay, now you can move it. You can shift the vehicle once they have completed their duties there. Then yeah, you can move that. Are we together? Now that happens if there was someone killed or injured, right? But if there was no one who was killed or injured, and then yes, me now with the other person we can strike a deal, right? Sing a strike a deal. We can move our cars from the scene. But what I want you to understand there, you must report that case within this period. You go to the police and report that accident within 24 hours. It's compulsory to do that. Okay? It's compulsory to do that. Alright? But if you guys chose within these traffic officers, good bears and all of that, those guys, when they ask your information about you have to give them, right? Whether your names, your addresses, and all of those kind of things, you have to give them. And one of the things that they can ask when they are there is a sample, right? It's a sample to test Oguti, who was drinking and driving between the two of you, right? And you cannot refuse to give them that sample. Okay? You can't refuse to give them that sample. Now let's go and see Ogoti, how do they measure Ogoti, were you drinking and driving? Let's go and check that. So let's see the rules that are governing that. Okay? So with that, I want you to understand two things there. Right? On the road, we have two types of driver. You are either an ordinary driver or a professional driver. You will be one of the two. So an ordinary driver is anyone who has a license. A professional driver, right? It's those people with two Yama license, right? So these are the people with a PDP, a professional driving permit. Are we together?
Yebo, sir.
So
Yes,
so now depending whether you're an ordinary driver or a professional driver, the test they will differ, right? So the tests are the same. The type of test, Z2, they can either do you the test you via a blood sample or a breath sample, right? So breath sample is where you blow into a device, right? And the blood sample is where, of course, they take your blood via syringe and all of those kind of things, right? And the test they see ukuthi bota kangakanani. So in a case where they took a blood sample from ordinary driver, there one thing that I want you to understand is that your alcohol level in your body shouldn't pass that number. It should be less than 0.05 grams per 100 milliliter of a blood sample that they have taken, right? And for the very same test, which is a blood sample, but now done on a different driver, which is a professional driver, right? In that case, your alcohol level shouldn't pass 0.02 gram per 100 milliliter of that blood sample. I hope you can see from the measurements there, ukuthi the law is much more strict if you are a professional driver, and it's more lenient if you are an ordinary driver, right? So yeah, make sure that you understand that that test was based on blood. Now let's look at if they have taken you a breath sample, right? You have blown into this device. There, what I want you to understand is this: that alcohol level in your system as an ordinary driver, it shouldn't pass 0.24 milligram, right? So how do you cram this? When we are talking about the breath sample, you can see that we are talking about milligrams, right? When we are talking about a blood sample, we are talking about grams. That's the first thing. Number two, again, as I already spoke, Uguti, if it's an ordinary driver, you can see it's 0.24, which is greater than 0.1, right? So it's more lenient. It means for that person it's twice this, right? So when as a professional driver, should you pass 0.1, you'll be considered as someone who was drunk. For example, 0.2 milligram, all right? If you're a professional driver and then they tested your system and then they found the alcohol level is 0.2 milligram per 1,000 milliliter of that breath sample, then you'll be considered as someone who was drinking and driving. Clear? Mbuzo? So make sure that you do understand all of those four tests, right? Z4. Two for the ordinary driver, two for a professional driver. That's it when it comes to those tests on the alcohol levels.